Alright guys, hope you're doing well, hope you're all keeping safe. It's been a while since I last made a video on The Division 2 or actually played the game. Like many, with no new content until late this year at the earliest, and no news to speak of, I've taken this time to play and cover other games. I will tell you what though, I jumped on The Division 2 last night and it did feel really good to be back. It feels good to be making this video. I've really missed it. Anyway, enough of the sentimentality, let's get into this one. On March 5th, we got the Road Ahead article from Ubi Massive, providing some information on what to expect for new content. I've already speculated about what the new game mode coming might be, but one thing the article also said was the devs were looking into ways to increase build variety and viability. So I guess the question, and what I think I want to talk about today is, what do you think the devs can do to make this come true? Let's discuss what options the devs might have. To help me provide some options for the devs and to get you guys involved, I put a poll out 6 days ago with a few suggestions, but really what I wanted from that poll was for you to leave your own suggestions in the comments, and you didn't fail with 160 comments. So the question I put out for the poll was, with year 3 content in the Division 2, we are meant to be seeing changes, additions that will increase build variety and viability. What changes would you like to see? Below are a few, but leave your own comments. Now the options I gave were unlimited exotics equipped at once, new gear, weapons and talents, bring back passive talents, and other. The results are really not a big deal. I'm not really paying too much attention to those, but with 3.1k votes and with nearly half of all of those votes, it does appear having the ability to equip as many exotics as possible is one thing the devs could implement with the next update, and I think a lot of people would enjoy that change. New gear, weapons and talents I think are a certainty. I cannot foresee a major update, especially with a new game mode that does not have these new things, as they are probably the easiest way to increase build variety just by adding more options into the game. But aside from the obvious additions, which I think are pretty much guaranteed, what other things could the devs do in order to achieve their goal? I've taken a look at the comments and created a list of things that I think could work. Although I'm not a dev, so I don't actually know if they could work. They just sound like they could work on paper. There was a lot of comments to go through, so this might be spread over multiple videos. But let's get started. First off then, all talents on all gear pieces. If you remember back to the launch of the Division 2, all gear pieces were able to get talents. You could have knee pads with patience on them with a requirement of 7 or more defensive attributes, or you could have overlord gloves with compensated, requiring 3 or less offensive attributes to activate. Obviously we had gloves with clutch as well. We also had passive talents on top of those. Obviously, since then, we've had Gear 2.0, and now it's only possible to have 2 talents active at one time, although it is 3 talents if you include an exotic as well. Many people, myself included, liked the idea of Gear 2.0, and I still do. Overall, it simplified the build experience for me, which is a good thing because I'm not the best at making builds, and I presume it's made balancing far easier for the devs. With that said though, the game is over 2 years old now, and I cannot think of a better way to increase build variety than increase the number of available talents on gear. Now, should it go back to 6? I don't know about that, but it should certainly be increased. I suspect we will get a PTS for the next update. I mean, they kind of have to have one. So I'd increase it to maybe 4 pieces, 5 if you include an exotic, and then just go from there. This still means that players who perhaps don't want to go crazy into builds don't have to, but for those who do, this will open back up a world of possibilities. And with the game being 2 years old and the majority of the audience being veterans of the game, having a system where you can really get in deep like we did when the game first launched makes sense at this point. It didn't actually make sense to have that kind of build system when the game launched, which is why I can understand why they went with Gear 2.0. But now that we're 2 years in, most people have got a grasp on builds and numbers and stuff. It makes sense to try and bring that back. The only potential downside is, of course, balancing, but with the game basically abandoning PvP, does balancing need to be that strict in PvE? Question mark. That's not to say that we should just abandon PvP. I'm just stating what the game appears to be doing. So as long as it's not crazy and, you know, some builds aren't just completely dominating, it doesn't need to be balanced. There's always going to be a meta. Rework underperforming talents. I've beat this drum many times, even going as far to do a talent tier list at one point. There's so many talents in this game that are just completely useless. Mad Bomber, Efficient, Braced, Energize, Overclock, that's just to name a couple. One suggestion would be to add these talents onto other gear pieces. That was a suggestion I saw in the comments on the poll, but to be honest, they'd still be useless talents. I think these either have to be reworked, replaced, or they just need to be removed. Either way, something needs to be done, because right now all they do is just vastly decrease the chance of players getting talents they actually want, fueling frustration and clogging up the loot pool. If I had it my way, I wouldn't even bother reworking these, because I think the core, the bones of these particular talents are just not good for the game. I'd actually just replace them with other talents that are going to, you know, be up there, who are going to be balanced and are going to be viable options. I think that's probably the best route the devs could go down. Gear enhancements that interact with our skills and weapons. One of the best things about Outriders is the modding system, and if you haven't played Outriders or you've not seen anything about it, I highly recommend you do. And the reason why is because mods are what makes your skills go from nothing to the ultimate source of power. Not just skills, but weapons as well. In the Division 2, you can build towards skills and they can become quite strong. In fact, I reckon a lot of people would say they're probably the strongest source of power in the game right now. But there really isn't much interaction between gear and skills and weapons, especially when it comes to modding. Now in Outriders, mods transform your skills. You could add a mod to your weapon that could freeze enemies when fired upon, slow enemies down, make enemies get lifted in the air for a period of time. They really transform the experience. Now I know these particular mod effects wouldn't work here in the Division 2, of course, but having mods or gear enhancements that interact with skills and weapons in a way that would offer incredible levels of power might be worth a look. Without a doubt, the skill modding in this game is pretty bad in my opinion. I've talked about this many times. Overall, the mods just offer little to no effect on skills or on weapons. So yeah, I really think they need to look into this, a way to make us more powerful, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people who play this game want to feel more powerful. I still think there is a balancing issue between how players feel compared to NPCs. NPCs, for the most part, still feel way more powerful than agents do, and doing this, rebalancing mods and just making them have a much better effect on skills and weapons might be a good way to make us feel that power more. Rebalancing of offensive, defensive and skill attributes. This is one I wanted to add, and something I've spoken about before numerous times. Build viability, not variety, is never going to be fixed. There's always going to be a meta in a looter shooter, but right now, I think the devs need to rebalance red, yellow, and blue stats. Blue stats especially, health, for example, and armor, are pretty pointless in this game. It's impossible to tank in this game without a shield or protection from elites, which nullifies the armor stat. You can have 700k armor, or you can have 2 million, and it really doesn't feel like there's much of a difference. It's like 1 or 2 seconds most of sustained damage. That's about the difference you're going to get. Even with a protection from elites or blue build, you still have to be very alert for the red bars and veterans who will shred you in seconds. Obviously they bypass the protection from elites mods. The Division 2 is perhaps the only looter shooter I've played where the grunts, or red bars here, you know, the low tier enemies, can put out such massive damage so quickly. I mean, you're looking at millions of damage in only a couple of seconds, making them very lethal from incredible distances. Even Outriders have got this balancing right, with the weakest enemies being easy to take down and not being able to put out that much damage. So why then do red bar enemies have to be so lethal? I know that's a bit off topic, I know, but armor needs to be reworked, so players are not forced to use a shield or use protection from elite mods in order to feel tanky. These should be additions on top of that tankiness. Health, likewise, feels pretty useless in this game. Overall, I just think all three of these stats need to be looked at. As I said, blue stats especially. And I've said this before, but for armor, why don't they just increase the overall strength of each blue armor attribute? So instead of having all blues and be at 3 million armor, all blues might put you up to 15 million armor or something. I don't know if that's a good number. That's probably too much. But you get what I'm saying. The amount of blue attributes have more of an impact, so that once you get to that 6th blue build or whatever it is, you do feel like you're a tank without the use of mods or without the use of a shield. This won't fix the red bar damage issue for players who don't invest in armor, but it will mean players can become a tank through blue attributes alone. I'll stop this one right here. There's many more ideas I could add to this video, but it might be an hour long. So what I'll do is I'll just break this up into multiple videos. That was the 4 suggestions I made. 3 of those came from the comments basically, and there's 160 comments. So yeah, we're going to need more videos on this. I want to thank you all for sticking around until the end. Feel free to head to the comments with as many ideas as possible on how the devs can increase build variety and viability in the next major update. As I said, I plan to make quite a few videos on this topic. Until the next one, guys, epic out.